Are you done? Are you just going to keep?
Well, apparently Lori and Chad are just going to keep ... as Judge Boreski so wisely said. Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the midlife revolution. For those of you who have been around my channel for any amount of time, you know how I feel about Chad Daybell and his ridiculous letters. I have fought with myself back and forth about how to approach this, or if I was going to approach it at all. And the only thing that I could land on for the moment was to write a letter to Emma asking her to please stop posting Chad's letters. Well, either she didn't receive my communication or she ignored it, because we are now up to nine letters from Chad. And I have decided that I'm going to address this somehow. Now, I actually already recorded a very snarky response to letter number 1, but then I thought better of it and decided not to post it. But for those of you who want to know what Chad is writing about without actually having to read it, I thought that I would distill this a little bit and do some summaries. I also think it's really important to talk about it because in the news the last little while, there have been some rumblings of other groups who are kind of teaching the same thing and who also don't believe that Lori and Chad did anything wrong. And so I think it's especially important now to come out and be real about who Chad and Lori are, and to just let people know, if you're coming to this website, Letters to Chad, hoping to get an honest look at who Chad is and how things have transpired in his life, this ain't it, y'all. He is using every manipulative tactic in the book to try to get people to believe that he really had nothing to do with these horrific murders and with the children's bodies being found in his backyard. Now, if you're new to the case, God bless you. I'm so glad that you don't have this living rent-free in your head like many of us do and have had for the last 6 years. But just to recap, my dumb cousin, Charles Vallow Arizona, went off on a religious deep end, became extremely fundamental Mormon, and paired up with Chad Daybell, who was a self-proclaimed prophet and someone who claimed to have spiritual powers due to his near-death experiences. They went on a killing spree that included killing Lori's estranged husband, her 2 youngest children, and Tammy Daybell, who was Chad's wife. And there are other deaths that are surrounding this case that are suspicious, such as the death of Joseph Ryan, Lori's 3rd husband, and also the death of her brother Alex Cox, who helped her carry out this killing spree. So the difficulty now that the rest of us have is to listen to or to wade through the appeals process, as Chad has been sentenced to death in Idaho, and Lori is serving multiple life sentences currently in Idaho and possibly at some time in Arizona, depending on how her appeals go. And I believe that Chad has started this website writing these letters because he wants people to believe that he had nothing to do with the deaths, that he was totally innocent, that he really is a prophet of God. And, you know, for whatever reason, he didn't testify in his own case. I'm guessing on his attorney's advice, because then his testimony would be subject to cross-examination. And so I think he's using this website as an opportunity to, quote, get his story out, or his version of the story, when it's not subject to cross-examination in a court of law, where you can't use hearsay and manipulation tactics, as Lori found out in her 2 trials in Arizona when she tried to represent herself. Very unsuccessfully, I might add. So starting with letter number 1, I'm just going to keep it real for you, and I'll show the text on screen in case there is anybody who wants to pause and read his terrible writing. It hasn't gotten any better. He wrote several terrible books that he published himself and fancied himself an author, but his writing is really pretty terrible. So I'm going to basically summarize what he's trying to say here and talk about some of the manipulation tactics that he's trying to use to try and clear his name. So he basically starts out with a very friendly tone. He wants people to know that he's grateful for the cards and letters they sent, although I doubt that anybody has really sent him cards and letters maybe one person has, and he's kind of expanding on that to make you think that lots of people are supporting him while he's in jail. He's grateful for the kind words, and he's cherished each one. Again, overly effusive language trying to get you to believe that he really cares about what people are sending him and that he's appreciative as a normal human being would be. He then goes on to say that he's not going to talk about the details of death row, his schedule, or information about other people on death row. And I think that's a nod to Kohlberger, although we don't know if they have any interaction or not. But Chad is always going to be one to try and hitch himself to someone who is more important or special or has more notoriety than him. He tells us that he's spending a lot of time working on appeals. Then again, he goes back to express gratitude for everyone who's been a part of his life, talking about the fact that he spent lots of hours reviewing his life and the people who have influenced him. And he kind of talks about time standing still when he didn't have a clock in Fremont County during his trial. He talks about going over his entire life and writing down the names of people who were positive influences on him and saying that they have enriched his life in so many ways. He says that he's using this website to share his story because he wants everybody to see it uncensored and unfiltered directly from him. He says he knows how people have seen him in the media, but he thinks that those portrayals are unrecognizable and that he's not the man the media created. He's not a cult member who should be feared. He's not a conspirator or a killer. He says he's a father, a grandfather, a husband, son, brother, and friend. And so he's obviously trying to humanize himself and get you to think of him as just another family man. And the way that he ends this paragraph is with a very typical Mormon phrase that makes other Mormons think of somebody who is faithful and devoted to the Mormon church. He says, "I'm a friend with a firm faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ." And so he's trying to make us believe that he still believes the teachings of Mormonism and that he's following them. Then he goes on to talk about having in-person visits with family members and talking about how wonderful those are. I doubt there have been as many as he says. I doubt that they were wonderful. I can only imagine what it must be like as a mother or father to go visit your son on death row and have him be completely delusional about his role in his own incarceration. It must be heartbreaking and horrible. So I can't imagine anybody visiting Chad with a smile on their face and talking about how wonderful life is. He ends this paragraph with, I think, a really manipulative phrase. When people find out that my relatives have visited me, they usually ask them, how has he changed? Well, first of all, how would Chad know that people find out that his relatives have visited him in prison? They would have to come back and say, oh, I was telling so-and-so that I visited you in prison. And they asked me, how has Chad changed? I doubt any of that ever took place. He's completely inventing this as a way to put out this narrative, which is, he says, my relatives give the same response, quote, he hasn't changed. He's the same Chad we always knew. Well, that part of it I kind of do believe is true, because I believe that throughout his life, Chad has always had a disregard for the value of human life and a curious obsession with death. I'm going to revert to his autobiography where he was killing all of these bees, dozens and dozens of them, and a voice came into his mind telling him to stop, as if he didn't know himself that that was bad and he had to listen to a voice to tell him to stop. And the other part of it being, you know, his time as a cemetery sexton, spending a lot of time around death and dead bodies and graves. And he actually wrote a book called One Foot in the Grave, I think. So I believe he's always been obsessed with death. I believe he's always had somewhat of a nonchalant attitude towards human life. And I believe he's always been deeply vengeful and somebody who wants to see people get their comeuppance when they don't reward him the way that he thinks he should be rewarded. He goes on to say that he's still the quiet, gentle person you all know. He's always been a peacemaker, even in prison. And then he goes on to proclaim his innocence, never conspired, never caused anyone's death, and then tries to say that he shares in our sadness, pain, and grief over these deaths. He says he doesn't have all the answers even now, but he's grateful a more complete story will be shared during his appeals process. And boy, I can't wait, Chad. We're all looking forward to whatever it is that you've concocted this time. The next paragraph he talks about during his trial, following his attorney's advice to just sit quietly and not smile or show emotion. And he says that's standard protocol, but he says now he realizes it made him appear to be cold and uncaring, which is the opposite of who I am. I actually think that is exactly who he is. Cold and uncaring. He seemed very smug during the trial. I observed a couple of days of court, and definitely that was the main takeaway, was that he was smug. He couldn't hold back tears, but, I saw him take out a handkerchief, or tissues, I guess, were handed to him while Tammy's autopsy pictures were shown, and his eyes were completely dry. So I didn't see any tears at all. All I saw was, fake emotionality being expressed. He sounded more emotional on his 911 call than he ever looked in court, and I could tell that the 911 call was faking it as well. Then he goes on to say that the main purpose of the letters is to share what he had hoped would have been explained in court. And he's going to try to make these letters informative and worth our time. They're already not worth our time, Chad. He says he realizes that many people never change their negative opinion of him. And that's because, Chad, we have seen the factual evidence come forth in court. Then he says there's this merging of mainstream media with law enforcement, and very few defendants are portrayed in a positive way. Yeah, that's usually because they're guilty. He says, all I can hope for is that these letters can begin to generate feelings of healing, reconciliation, and understanding. Well, if anything, Chad, they have done the opposite. These letters have generated feelings of anger, of animosity, of fury. They've done exactly the opposite. Everyone is angry that Chad is being given a voice on this website. And many of us suspect that it is his daughter, Emma, that's helping him do this. Many of us are infuriated at Emma's involvement in this, mainly because, it would be great if Emma could just have her own life now that her dad is on death row. It would be nice if she could break away from whatever indoctrination she endured while she was his daughter living in his home. But, the fact of the matter is that it is an incredibly difficult psychological hurdle to jump over, to come to the conclusion that your father has done something so horrific. And I really believe that Chad turned his children, adult children included, against Tammy. And, listening to their testimonies in court was heartbreaking. To listen to children agree, not children, but I mean, they were adults at the time, but Emma and Garth, listening to them agree with Chad's narrative that Tammy was ill, it was infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time. Now, a lot of these letters, he ends with a bookshelf and musical notes. He's trying to, have books that he'd like us to read or in order to understand him better, or music that he wants us to listen to that has inspired him lately. And this is just the lamest attempt in the world at getting people to, set aside all of the facts and evidence that we saw in court, all of the horrific autopsy pictures that we saw, and just pretend that Chad's a regular guy. He likes books and music. So the first bookshelf that he talks about, this bookshelf that he built in a woodshop class in the 80s, how this one bookshelf is still in existence. And, he put his family's favorite books as well as the books that he published. He's making this cheesy metaphor toward sharing the significance of the books in the upcoming letters. And we know that one of the main reasons that he created this website, or that he, basically advocated for this website, at the bottom of the bookshelf, there is a paid link that you can access. where he gets an affiliate commission for selling whatever book he's plugging on here. Now, he starts out with a book by someone else. It's a book called Life Everlasting by Dwayne S. Crowther. And he says it's one of the first books he placed on his new bookshelf after he discovered it as a teenager. And it is, guess what, everyone, a near-death experience book. And he says he's going to be sharing more quotes from it in the upcoming letters. And it talks about where we came from before we were born, why we're here on earth, and where we go after death, which is basically the Mormon narrative of, the missionaries back in the 80s and 90s used to talk about those three big questions. Well, where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? And the Mormons can answer those questions for you. So he says that Life Everlasting, the book, provides those answers. Now, it was published in the 60s. And then there was an update released in 2008. He calls the author by his first name to make us all think that they're very close to each other. Although I doubt if this person has ever heard of Chad Daybell, or if he has, he would probably be horrified that Chad is getting an affiliate commission to plug his book. So if you click on the link here, it says it's a paid link. It is totally transparent, and it takes you right to the Amazon page where you can buy this book for $26.99. And if you buy it, then whoever it is that's running Chad's website gets an affiliate commission from that. Now, Chad is going to move on to sharing his own books a little bit later in these letters with, you guessed it, paid links to buy his books as well. So it's very clear he's trying to generate some income for himself. Although, according to the Victim Restitution Act, any money that he earns from these endeavors is going to go to victim restitution rather than to his own pocketbook. At least that's what the law says, and I'm going to be keeping track of that as well. Then he goes on to musical notes. I love all kinds of music, he says. He's going to mention songs that have been the soundtrack to his life. So he says he doesn't want to disrupt the flow of the letter by discussing a song's importance to him, and instead wants to include it in musical notes at the end to give added meaning and depth. I'm personally offended by all of this, and I just think it's disgusting. Anyway, he tells a story about his first 3 years in Fremont County where he didn't really get to hear music. And then one day he was out on the basketball court and one of the jail staff was playing a song. And, he talks about there not being able to get very good reception out there. And he had this portable radio. And he knew that there was a station. There were a couple stations that would come in. And one of them was a Christian station called K-Love. This is not a Mormon station, but it's a Christian station, specifically doesn't play Mormon music as far as I know. But he talks about this one song by a group called Cain. That's right, C-A-I-N, as in the same spelling of the same name of the same person who killed his brother in the Bible. So that's a little ironic, I think. But he talks about the song I'm So Blessed by Cain. You can click on this YouTube video and watch the video of it. But the lyrics that he wants us to focus on are, quote, on my best day, I'm a child of God. On my worst day, I'm a child of God. So the song, I Am a Child of God, is a very important song in Mormonism. It's one of the first songs that all Mormon children learn about God sending us to earth, to our family, to prove that we love God. And we all identify as a child of God. And so what he says is that this song helped him remember on his worst days that the Lord was with him at all times, especially when the going got tough. Just going to throw out a glib phrase about being convicted of murder. So he says, if you're having a hard day, click on the link and hopefully the song lifts your spirits with an exclamation mark at the end. So he's really doing the goofiest, dorkiest job possible of trying to distance himself from the absolute horror that he participated in. And that's one of the reasons I find it so disgusting, is because he somehow has this ability to push away the cognitive dissonance of knowing about his own participation, but believing on some level that he actually didn't participate. And so again, my purpose in going through these letters is because I want people to remember that this man is a dangerous criminal. He is a convicted murderer. He is serving a sentence on death row. He will be executed at some point for his participation in the deaths of at least 4 people. And there is no justice in the world if Chad Daybell gets a platform to try and convince everyone that he's just a regular guy, that he's just a good guy trying to do what God wants him to do, because he's none of that. And I, for one, I'm so disgusted by it that it's taken me this long to talk about it. These letters have been out for a long time. Lots of people have commented on them. I highly recommend Kit from Wordwise. She does an excellent job of breaking down the language that Chad uses and subtly ridiculing him in the snarkiest way possible. And I think it's brilliant. I also really appreciate Mike King's recaps, although I don't love the fact that he uses AI to have someone read the letters in a voice it's not supposed to be imitating Chad, but it is a little disturbing to hear a male voice reading these letters as if it was Chad. And I also don't love recreating what might be a letter from Chad in AI. I don't appreciate that use of AI, but I do love Mike King. I love his show. I love his commentary. I love the way he breaks down these letters. So it is, he's somebody that I deeply respect, but I just have a little bit of criticism about the way that he went about using AI. So I am going to continue to break down these letters. I don't know how long it will take me. I'm going to try to contain my internal snark. I'm going to try to contain my vomit as I go through this. And I'm purposely doing it without my face on the camera because I want people to focus on what Chad is actually trying to accomplish here. And I also want to be free to kind of express myself without worrying about, what my facial expressions are, because a lot of times they telegraph how I feel a lot more than my words do. And I want the focus to be on remembering what a horrible monster Chad Daybell is, and that he's, I hope, not fooling anybody with these letters, but at the very least, I hope he's not gaining and recruiting followers or gaining sympathy from the general public because he's just a regular guy, because he's not. He is a cold-blooded killer, and we need to remember that above all else. He got the sentence that he deserved, and while I don't agree anymore with the death penalty, I am grateful, for one, that he's not ever going to be out in public to harm people again. So with that, I will end this video and move on to letter number 2. I hope you'll join me for that. Please, if you found the content valuable, please share it with someone who would want to hear it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, I would appreciate that, as it is the best free way to support the channel. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a beautiful human, and I'll see you again soon.